وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Alhamdulillah, we completed Surah Al-Ra'd, and amongst the verses in Surah Al-Ra'd that we initially recited is the verse in relation to the revelation of the Quran and how this is true, and how the one who understands this is not like the one who is blind. And only those take heed from the verses of the Quran who possess aql, who possess intellect, and they are those who connect and join that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded to join, meaning the relations. And they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they fear this punishment, and they fear the severity of hisab. And they are those who are patient, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they spend from what Allah has granted them, both secretively and openly, and they follow bad deeds with good deeds. And for them, they are the people of the Dar, and they are the people who will enter into Jannat, and it will be said to them, Salamun alaykum bima sabartum, salam upon you for what you were patient upon, and how great is the hereafter as an abode, as a place for you. In the same way, amongst the verses is the verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, those who believe and their hearts are filled with tranquility through the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ, nay, it is by the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the hearts gain peace. Surah Al-Ra'd is that surah which in narrations is mentioned that when a person is about to pass away, if this surah is recited, there will be ease in the exiting of the ruh from the body. After that, Surah Ibrahim, and amongst the initial verses of Surah Ibrahim is the command of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to his nation to remember the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them, and especially the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them from Fir'aun, who tormented them in a severe manner, and he would slaughter their children and would remove the honor of their women, and this was a huge test for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announces that if you are grateful, then indeed I will increase for you, and if you are ungrateful, then indeed my punishment is severe. The ayat in relation to gratitude, and this theme of gratitude is found throughout the recitation that was recited today. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in two places, one here in Surah Ibrahim and the other in Surah Al-Nahl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you are to count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will not be able to encompass them. We live in a time where there is a lot of anxiety and depression and grief. And one cause for this is where people don't focus upon those blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them. If a person is to focus upon which blessings Allah has granted to him or her, one would realize that the blessings are countless and beyond our capacity to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a single blessing of His. And yet, there are many who are sad or in difficulty because they are deprived of a certain blessing. And in the same way amongst the verses is the situation of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and how he left Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam along with his mother in Makkah al-Mukarramah, in a land where there was no cultivation and apparently no population. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established his house, and the first house in that land where apparently in terms of the way the land was, nobody would normally turn to such a place. The people would not normally turn towards a place where there's no cultivation, no growth, no plantation, and even in terms of water, the scarcity of water, and heat in terms of the severity of the heat. But through the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that he said, "Oh Allah, turn the hearts towards this place." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made that blessed land a center for the attention of the hearts of all the believers. And the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam that we famously recite in our salah, that, "Oh Allah, make us from those who establish salah, and our children, our progenies also, and oh Allah, accept our dua, and forgive me and forgive my parents and for all the believers on the day of Hisab." In the same way, amongst the last verses of Surah Ibrahim is that never perceive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unaware of what the oppressors do. Allah is just delaying them, Allah is giving them that moment, but then that day will come when they will be taken into account, and where their eyes will be plucked, where they will be punished severely for the tyranny that they are causing on the earth. In Surah Al-Hijr, the situation of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, and the command to the angels to prostrate to Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. In the same way, the description of Jannah and the beauties of Jannah and the blessings of Jannah. In the same way, the situation of Sayyidina Lut alayhi salatu wassalam nation. And then amongst the last verses of Surah Al-Hijr is that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you the 7 mathani, the 7 verses which are continuously recited, meaning Surah Al-Fatiha and the great Quran. And solace to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he should not be affected by those who do not turn towards the deen. For the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is fulfilling the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Surah Al-Nahl, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions his signs in the creation, in different types of creation, from the modes of transport that Allah has created, from the way in which Allah has created the skies and the earth, and amongst the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, including the creation of the bee, and including the creation of animals, and how human beings take benefit from the animals. And then the last verse that was recited included that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to us that book that is Tibyanan li kulli shay, that explains everything, and it is guidance and mercy and glad tidings for the Muslims and for the good doers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlighten our hearts with the nur of the Quran, and forgive us for any errors, and grant us the best of ability. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأهوال والآفات، وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات، وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات، وترفعنا بها أعلى الدرجات، وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على حبيبه سيدنا محمد وآله